Welcome to our webinar, Revolutionizing EBITDA, Benchmarking and Leveraging AI, Mastering Data-Driven Execution for Cost and Cash Excellence. I'm your host, Grant Holmes. This session is being recorded, will be shared later, and we'll get you information on that soon. Please use the Q&A at the bottom of your screen for any questions you may have, and if we have time, we'll get to your questions at the end. So our agenda is unveiling the power of strategic cost reduction, mastering cash flow generation from Calculum, steps to implement effective cost and cash flow strategies in your business, and then again, the Q&A. Today, I introduce Carlos and Oliver to take us through the session. Gentlemen, it's all yours.
Good afternoon, guys. I'm Carlos Grimaldos, founder and CEO of Altos. We are a management consulting firm, specializes in cost reduction, cash flow improvement, and operational excellence.
And from my side, welcome everybody. My name is Oliver Bellin. I'm the CEO of Calculum, also based here with Carlos in Miami. And we are a data analytics company focusing on procurement, helping procurement improve working capital, generating free cash flow by analyzing their suppliers and their spend. So we are super happy to show you a little bit today what we are doing and how we help organizations be more competitive when looking at their spend and their suppliers.
Excellent. So we wanted to start today and start talking about unveiling the power of strategic cost reduction. As executives, we all know that there's pressures on reducing costs, improving cash flow. And nowadays, we have to do that by using data analytics, operational improvements, technology-driven automation, and supply chain optimization. So as we go through this presentation, we're going to talk about some of the cutting-edge tools and tactics that are out there and what's available to reduce cash flow, right? And improve cash flow and reduce costs. So first, we need to understand the cost reduction landscape. And the better way to do that is to understand your spend, right? As an operator, as a business owner, as an executive, it's an imperative to understand where the money's going, right? And to do that, one of the best tools available nowadays is the Spend Cube. Spend Cube will give you the ability to address your spend and put it in different buckets, whether it's addressable, non-addressable, direct and indirect. And the key to this is to, over time, be able to increase the amount of managed spend, meaning the spend that is under management. And now I just want to clarify what's managed spend. Managed spend, we consider spend that we have a direct relationship with the supplier or a vendor, and that we are utilizing some type of lever or some type of strategy to reduce our cost position, right? To be able to be more effective in cash flow and reduce our costs, hence driving EBITDA improvement. And then the second is increase in spend under contract. So in other words, be able to move as much spend as you can to be under contract. The pandemic was a great equalizer for a lot of companies because those that had a lot of spend under contract, they had the ability that they had assurance of supply. They were able to provide products. They were able to be more resilient, more effective. Hence the reason that that's one of the top two KPIs for spend management: manage spend and increase in spend under contract. So the whole idea behind the Spend Cube is that not only you classify what's actually being sourced or what's going to be sourced, right? Hence the categories where it says scope and where it says out of scope. Where you see out of scope, sometimes it's because it's already sourced, right? And it's not due for renewal yet, right? But that doesn't mean that it's not going to be negotiated at a later time. Now, in order for this to be cohesive, you have to have category strategies. And the category strategies is the filter where you actually are going to be able to understand the market dynamics, where your position is, and how to drive to the savings. The other thing that is very interesting is by having these category strategies, you'll be able to very effectively be able to work with operations or work with the company to reduce that spend. typically we see that 40% of the spend is based to change effect, meaning spending and demand control, and that's done by procurement teams. The other part, the other 40% is leverage effect. That leverage effect is collaborating between operations teams and procurement. And then the final one is the capability effect, operational excellence. That is the 20% that is done 100% by operations or by the business in itself. So once you have your spend queue, right? Once you understand where the money is being spent, then you're gonna have to be able to understand your payment terms. You're gonna have to be able to understand your cost levers, right? You're gonna have to then be able to benchmark those payment terms and those costs by using AI or data analytics. So then you have a better idea of this is what we are paying, but the market indicates that this is what we could be asking from the suppliers. Hence, tools like Calculum that provide a huge leverage to be able to free up cash flow, because all of a sudden teams have the ability to understand what is possible, where before it wasn't available. This is cutting edge technology that is being able to put together based on huge data sets, a huge analytic tools and AIs and ML models. So now is the time to utilize those type of technologies that are emerging, such as Calculum, to be able to increase cash flow. And then the last one is develop insights in order to negotiate with suppliers, right? So once you have those three elements, right, which are the critical elements to reduce costs and increase cash flow, what you can do is look at the market intelligence, be able to understand where the market is, right? Then figure it out from the market, who are the right suppliers, where do you fit within that supplier base, be able to understand if we have what we call fit for purpose suppliers. From that perspective, then have the analytics, be able to analyze, this is the market, this is my needs, this is the supplier. So then you can start assessing the opportunity and come up with what we call opportunity indicators of opportunity, where basically you're able to decide, okay, based on how competitive the market is, I'm gonna do a reverse auction, or I'm gonna have a tender, or if it's a sole source and there's nobody available, this is the levers I can pull based on different market dynamics. So, but these are the core elements of any strategy when it comes to cost reduction and cost reduction landscape. Having those opportunity assessments and then be able to come up with results, and with the results be able to track them. So that at a very high level is the current landscape for cost reduction. So now let's talk about mastering cash flow.
Yeah, so maybe you can go to the next slide. So yeah, when it comes to cash flow, I just want to highlight two charts, which I think are important, what we see right now in the market. So obviously one is the focus of procurement, specifically looking at data analytics. So using AI and data analysis to gain a competitive advantage. This is a chart from, or a survey from Amazon Business from this year, showing that the majority of all larger organizations currently have projects in place or are looking at implementing AI in procurement. The next one, obviously, currently still with the high interest rate, is the biggest focus right now in finance, besides obviously, like always, cost reduction, is working capital. So having access to free cash flow and to improve working capital. And again, majority of companies are looking at that. Now, if you can go please to the next slide. So when it comes to working capital, as we know, there are different options to improve working capital. And either you can, obviously the easiest, you can go to your bank or get a financial debt. But one change, what we see is that companies are looking more and more at their payment terms. So the payment terms when it comes to procurement, so looking at optimizing the ways they're paying, the lengths it takes them to pay their suppliers. And if you look at the chart on the right side, this is the other view. So this is the perspective of the suppliers. And here you see, this is the last 3 years where you see suppliers indicate that they got approached by multinational corporates, by small and medium-sized companies, even by the public sector to increase payment terms. So it's across the board where companies are looking at payment terms to improve working capital. Now, if you can go to the next slide, is the interesting part is when it comes to payment terms, is that if you ask yourself or your peers how they know what should be the right payment terms, you always get the same answer. It's we don't know. And if we do some type of analysis to see what our competitors or what should be the right terms, it's all based manually on Excel. The key is that there is no market data. There's no database so far looking at payment terms and indicating what should be the right terms when looking at your supplier. This is why we came up with our platform called EBITDA, which is answering this problem. And it's really the first database, the first platform which provides insight. So I'm happy to share with you some like a quick demo. But you see here what has been analyzed. These are clients which we analyze the spend on the left side. On the right side, you see the cash flow opportunity, which was found just by looking at each single supplier and what should be the right terms. And on average, it's about 10% of working capital, which is unlocked. So let me show you quickly the platform so that you have kind of an idea how it looks like. So first of all, it's a web-based solution where we have to first match your suppliers. So you upload securely and encrypted your supply and spend data, and then we match it. Usually we have a matching rate of 85%. That means 85% of all your supplies we find in the database. Especially we are strong in emerging markets, smaller suppliers. Then we look at the rating, for example. So we enrich your data of your suppliers. We look at how much leverage a buying organization has by looking at their spend versus the total sales of each single supplier. We look at ratings. We look at distribution in terms of industry, in terms of geography. And then you can create different programs. So you can say, I'm looking at my indirect spend or my strategic or tail suppliers. And the platform automatically then looks at what are your contractual actual terms, and then what is the opportunity to optimize the terms based on the market standard, and what are the expected terms. So how much is the likelihood that this supplier will say yes to these new terms? And then obviously the result in terms of potential cash flow, expected cash flow. And we go even a step deeper where we really look at the probability, and I can zoom here, of success that the supplier will say yes, and the impact on the buyer. So basically the large volume buyers where the suppliers are more likely to say yes, to accept these new terms, and to make it easy, all then the suppliers are listed below, which are then easy to target. And obviously, an opportunity is useless if you don't have a plan where you can collaborate internally between your financial treasury team and your procurement. So the plan, you really can set up, you can say, I go after phase one, my low-hanging fruits or my suppliers in China or in packaging, and then you can track the execution per supplier group. And the last thing I want to show, obviously, all this data is available on each single supplier. So it provides you who is the ultimate parent so that you can see that you buy from the same organization at different terms, like here 90 days, 33, 31, company details, metrics like ratings, the cost of financing of each single supplier. We work with ESG rating and other metrics, but the key is to help procurement answering the question of why optimizing payment terms. So the system creates a script which tells you step by step what argumentation you should use to convince the counterparty to be successful in your terms negotiation. That is just a quick overview of the platform. So if you can go please to the next slide. This is just a case study of a very large multinational pharma organization where we analyzed over $6 billion in spend, over 5,500 suppliers. And just on the right side, just with 503 suppliers alone, we were able to unlock over 200 million free cash flow. This is money which obviously is aligned to the competition and which allows the organization, the buying organization, not to raise funds and raise financial debt, but just aligning the terms to the market. So back to you, Carlos.
Thank you. So now let's talk about the steps to implement effective cash flow strategies in your business, right? How do we take it home? How do we make sure that this is applicable to your business? And so whether you're using our services from Calculum or Valtos, this is something that applies to all businesses. And the idea behind this is to, first of all, get your data, right? And get the understanding of your suppliers, right? What are you buying? This is where you need to have a spend cube. And unfortunately, most of the time, in a lot of companies, that's just basically a missed opportunity. They don't have a spend cube. They don't understand where the money is actually going, right? And also the fact that they don't have strategic procurement practices. And finally, you got people that they're not trained properly to do that. But going back to the analysis process, it's something that takes about the front end. It takes about 1 to 2 weeks in terms of gathering data. Do you want to share something on that?
Yeah, maybe just what is very important is when maybe people in the audience, when they see that, they think, okay, I have to involve, it's a huge project, I need to involve the my IT department. But the good news is here, we can provide you an example. Basically, it's an Excel file which highlights all these different data points with examples. And you go to, these are standard fields, right? In ERP system, you go there, you download them and then export them securely to the platform. And so basically you can do it without any IT involvement or ERP integration to get started.
Right, excellent. And so part of that is as the data gets enriched and it gets normalized, by working with both of us, we have the ability to build that spend cube in case you don't have the spend cube or you don't have the ability or the know-how, based on that input of data, then what we're going to do is categorize and be able to anonymize the data, right? But as we create the spend cube, be able to come up with category levels, level 1, level 2, level 3, because based on that, that's where the category strategies are created. And that's where you start seeing an impact or understanding of where the money is going to come from, right? And then the final part was in the completing of the analysis is the data that is coming in on the proposed payment terms that are coming from Calculum, the supplier standards, the peer group standards, the cash flow opportunities. So you want to tell them about the 25 metrics?
I mean, it's providing an overall view on your existing, but also on your potential suppliers, which you want to onboard. And obviously information, can not only be used to get better payment terms, but if you know that you are the party in your peer group which pays earlier than all your competitors, you can use that as your advantage, this information to get maybe a better pricing or have better access to strategic goods and services you're purchasing. So metrics involve mainly financials, rating, but then industry, commodity metrics, and then sustainability, minority or business stuff like that.
Right, awesome. So the other part of the analysis, when you guys work together with both of us, one of the things you're gonna see is we're gonna come up not only with the spend cube, but the benchmark and indexing. Basically, it gives you the ability to say, okay, based on industry pricing or indices in different commodities, this is where you should have been paying, and then be able to come up with a regression analysis to say, okay, Mr. Supplier, I think we have evidence that we've overpaid by this much. You want to continue playing with us now, we need to have a payback, right? Give us back either a check or a discount going forward. Also cost savings metrics, defining what will be success, and then finally quantifying those opportunities for benefit and savings. So the back end of the analysis process is about 2 to 4 weeks. So all in all, the end-to-end process for the analysis is between 3 to 6 weeks. So now let's talk about how to implement this, right? What are the implementation steps? And it takes about between 12 and 20 weeks. And it all starts with once we have those indicators of opportunity, is analyzing those opportunities. Now dive deeper to understand what are the drivers from those suppliers we're targeting, what are the supplier characteristics, do benchmarking, and then it goes, if it's in the case of the cash flow, that's where you help in terms of setting up the program, which I think is very interesting.
Yes, I mean, look, at the end, first of all, before you even start, we can provide you, and usually we do that with every client. We first analyze it and see if there's an opportunity. Before you even sign up, you can see if it makes sense. I would say 99% of the cases, we always see ways to improve. But then, very important, we provide the insights, the analysis, but at the end, somebody has to then make the changes, negotiate, speak with the suppliers. So even there, we can help together with Evaldos to prepare a plan, set up, and then track the milestones versus the execution. But then even go a step forward with the communication. So to help you find out how you communicate to the suppliers, which argumentation you use with an FAQ, and help you to be really successful with this negotiation, maybe even help you sending out these emails to communicate to the suppliers with these new terms, and then be successful in tracking.
Right. And then the last two steps is, I mean, they're concurrent with the last four steps, but here's where a different element comes in. And it is those suppliers that basically don't want to play ball, right? That you recognize you've overpaid for the past X number of years. They're not playing ball in payment terms and is not favorable to your cash flow. And then you decide, let's look for somebody else. We can help in the entire RFP execution, right? And executing those initiatives that we priorly identify, we can become force multipliers and add that additional horsepower that nowadays is so crucial for business to succeed. And then finally, we want to make sure that it's sustainable, make sure that the companies can stand on their own and be able to empower the teams to be able to continue this going forward, because this is going to be on cycles.
Yes.
After you move some other suppliers into a contract, guess what? That contract is going to expire in 3 years, 5 years, that sort of stuff. That the teams and the companies need to be empowered to continue doing so.
Yeah, the very important part is it's not a project, it's an ongoing change in how you deal with suppliers and how you make sure you use data in your favor to gain a competitive advantage. So it's not a project, it's an ongoing improvement.
Excellent. So that's what we have. Brent, you want to take it from here?
Are there any questions which came in?
Yes. Thank you, gentlemen. That was fascinating. And we do have a couple questions. The first one is, what are the savings for a company that has, say, 2,000 suppliers and 500 million in revenue?
Right. I guess to answer that question, there's two metrics: the cash flow metric, and then from the procurement, from the cost reduction metric. So I'll talk about the cost reduction, you talk about the cash flow. But typically in a company that size, it ranges between, I would say, 10% and 25%. Is significant. But basically, those are the numbers. And that's why this type of practices, this type of initiatives are so crucial for businesses, especially entering into 2024, based on the fact that top line is going to be very difficult, right? You have to manage your margins, you have to manage your cash flow. So that's basically the percentages within the cost reduction. What about the cash flow?
Yeah, it's surprisingly, it's almost the same. So we usually say 8-10%, depending on the industry, on what is the market position of the buyer? Is it strong? Does it have a lot of leverage? Which is all analyzed. And also then how important is that? Because you need to sometimes get some sacrifice, or you need to have some power in your negotiation. So, but usually, yes, 8-10%. It's feasible and it's achievable, yes.
And that would be on top of the 10 to 25 from the cost reduction. So fantastic savings.
So my question is, those percentages are percentages of what? The current spend?
Correct.
Current spend.
Yes.
Okay. So they got 500 million in revenue. Let's just say they're spending 200 million. They could save 10 to 20%, depending on the numbers you spoke of that spend.
Correct.
Okay. So what is the definition of managed spend? What's that means, and how does it lead to savings?
Excellent question. So The definition of managed spend is where there's a interaction between a strategic procurement uh, and a supplier. So the best way to visualize that is when you get a purchase order issued just to pay an invoice, that's not managed spend, right? Managed spend is where there's an interaction with the supplier. And it depends on the spend, it depends on the category, but because it's a small number, that doesn't mean it cannot be managed, right? Anything can be managed if you got the right suppliers, if you got the right tools and the right ability for people to buy, whether it's just a pen or buying a capital improvement project. It all can become managed. It's just being able to identify the fit for purpose supplier and the right activities that need to take place so that that spend is recognized, right? So anything that is done in the front end, and that in fact is not just an activity just to pay an invoice, right? That's what we consider managed spend. I know it's a wide term, but that's why those categories, right? By looking at the spend, creating those category buckets and creating the strategies for each one of them will allow you to have the visibility to say, okay, let's go after this spend, then this other one, this other one, and so on, in order to generate more savings and ultimately have the right suppliers provide you at the right time.
Okay. Why do you suggest increasing the spend under contract? Isn't that a way to bring additional financial liabilities to the company?
That's an excellent question. Well, to answer the question, it doesn't bring a financial liability as long as you utilize the right contract. So what I suggest companies utilize is a master supply agreement, right? Obviously, something similar to that effect. But the idea behind the contract is that you're going to lay out whatever contract instrument you use, is to lay out the terms so that if this happens, this is the recourse, this is what's going to happen, or this is the alternative we're going to take, right? And it's not a strain on a business. You're not incurring into additional liability because what you want to do is once you talk to the suppliers and enter into that agreement, just talk about forecasting best case scenario, worst case scenario, but do not commit to a specific amount or a specific unit, right? Because at the end of the day, we all know things fluctuate up or down, but obviously you have the ability to say, as long, this is the current condition, this is the current volume, as things progress, right? We are committing to buying this quantity from you. Unfortunately, there's not going to be a volume commitment. So, but companies understand that and they understand the type of language. So that's why it doesn't become a liability to any business.
Interesting. Well, gentlemen, that's all the questions I have. Wanted to make sure everybody knew that we've been talking today about unveiling the power of strategic cost reduction, mastering cash flow generation, the steps you can take to implement these cost-effective cost and cash flow strategies in your business, all wrapped up into revolutionizing EBITDA, which was the benchmarking and leveraging AI, mastering the data-driven execution for cost and cash excellence. Gentlemen, thank you for all the information. I am sure this has been valuable to our audience. Thank you again.
Thank you, Grant.
Thank you, Grant.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.